Welcome to Command Control Power, a weekly podcast hosted by 3 certified members of the Apple Consultants Network, drawing from over half a century of combined experience. We talk shop, interview vendors and colleagues, and share what we've learned while operating our technology consulting practices. This is Joe Saponari of CyMac, and my 2 co-hosts are Jerry Zigman of MacWorks and Sam Valencia of the HCS Technology Group. For the freshest content, a peek behind the scenes, and more candid conversation about running our businesses, dealing with clients, fixing tough technical issues, and everything else you love about Command Control Power, we invite you to join us on Patreon so you don't miss any of this great content. Go to commandcontrolpower.com and click support. Pledge monthly, and you can instantly subscribe to the patron-only shows right in your favorite podcast app. Once again, to join us on Patreon and get the latest patron-only episodes, visit commandcontrolpower.com and click support. We hope to see you there, and thanks for listening.
So as Jerry reminded me, I was recently on a trip, and actually I want to talk about the personal part of my trip at some point because I had an opportunity to be on a personal endeavor of hiking through the middle of the country before I went to the Jamf Nation User Conference, but that's a story for another day. Anyway, I was out in San Diego for that conference, and the first in-person conference I've been to in a few years. Phenomenal experience, a little weird at first, but great to see people, shake hands, say hi, have a beer, do whatever. And I had a great opportunity out there to meet up with a longtime supporter of the show, John Brown, who was kind enough to actually sponsor an event where we went to a San Diego Padres game. And it was awesome, man. I don't follow baseball on TV because I find it particularly boring on TV, but going to a game or to a sporting event of any kind or a concert or whatever, it's pretty fun. Just the atmosphere that's there. And we got to do it in a suite, which was even better. But I hung out with John for a long while and actually ran into Nate Cinal, another great longtime listener of the show. We talked. I want to have Nate on sometime soon as well. We had chatted about that. But overall, just discussing business stuff, sure. But like also just talking about life and how things have changed and where we are. And all that was a really awesome experience, I have to say. But beyond that, I was talking with John a little bit about his sponsorship of the show and I want to have him on to talk about the changes in his company as well. But he was telling me that he gets a ton, like tens of thousands of visits to his site a month. And he was saying a large portion of his visits come from us because he's sponsored so long and because we have his links throughout the show that throughout the history of, if you look up a topic and we show up in that search, he might get clicked on through that. So this is well worth his weight in gold. And I was like, wow. Thanks, John. That's awesome. But it was just a cool thing to hear that he gets so much traffic, a big portion of it from our show.
That's great to hear. Yeah, and John's one of our biggest supporters as well as far as other fellow consultancies go. So the fact that he's getting the value, that's really great to hear. Thanks, John. John's a great dude. Yeah, that's awesome you got to see him, Sam. Very cool.
Yeah, he actually this is just, again, topics for future shows, and I do want to have him back on, but he gave me some ideas just business-wise. We were talking a bit because of his expansion details, and this is why I like talking to other people that are fellow business owners, especially those that are in our industry. And I got some great information from him that I got to take back with me. And it was almost like our own mini conference. And so it was really important to have those get-togethers because you just don't get that otherwise. Like Slack is great. We talked about that on a recent episode, but to really see someone and have a sit down and chat, and it really changes that experience. Yeah, I wanted to say thanks to John and thanks to Nate for meeting up. That was awesome.
John's one of those guys, not only is he extremely successful, but he's also like this perfect example of thinking outside the box. And also, I hope he doesn't mind that I put this moniker on him, but he's one of those people like who truly believes go big or go home. And he does things in such a highly professional manner that it makes you just rethink your own business over and over again because he's a very polished businessman. I think that's the only way I can describe it.
Yeah. And to put this all into perspective as well, having an opportunity to chat with Nate, I haven't talked to him much outside of our interactions within the show, Slack and things like that. So he was really great to talk to just to learn more about what his business is about and how he positions himself and how he cares about his clients. And I always think every time you talk with people, it's like me talking with you two. I always pick some kind of nugget of information from other people. And I think that's what I got out of that too, is just Nate's an all-around great dude too. Like, he was cool to hang out with and we had a lot of fun, but also just learning from him in terms of every business is different, right? So I can pick up something from anybody, no matter how good I think I'm running. And I do want to talk about that too, because I don't think I've been running well lately, but that's a whole other story. But just picking up those nuggets from other people is genuinely a great deal.
Totally. Yeah, I want to hear more about how your stuff is running or not running, Sam, especially after your recent road trip and hiking and all that. I can relate to all of the above. Definitely want to hear about that. I also want to, speaking of two of our big supporters, John Brown of Grove Tech and Nate Cinal of We Are Scout. And by the way, my wife Ashley is still wearing the Scout shirt. So thank you, Nate. That's awesome. And it's a great shirt. So we have another big supporter, Addigy. I haven't spoken about Addigy enough lately, I think. We often mention them just because they come up organically so often. But I made a note to just mention again how much I want to sing the praises of everything they do, but specifically Go Live, Live Desktop, and a Live Terminal. So have you guys done remote migrations with Live Desktop? I've had a great workflow on this, and I encourage you guys both to check this out. Have you guys tried that at all?
You taught me how to do that, Joe.
Yeah, I remember you've talked about this. It's cool. I want to hear more because it's probably improved over time too, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Live Desktop 2. I don't know if I've mentioned Live Desktop 2, but it came out of beta maybe a couple months ago now, and it's just rock solid. It's really fantastic. Here's my workflow. I talk a client through opening the box, going through the initial setup, they get on Wi-Fi, they skip the data transfer, they get to their desktop. So they just create a temporary user account and they get to the desktop. Next step is open Safari, go to my little custom URL. They type it in. It's very easy to type in. And that downloads the configuration profile for Addigy. So this is just like a temporary policy that I have specifically for this kind of use. So if they're not on my monthly plan, I still use it just temporarily for the migration process. So they download the configuration profile. They go to system preferences and they go to profiles and they just click install. So it's like literally 2 steps. Get through the initial setup assistant, download the configuration profile, and click install. So now with Addigy Live Desktop, I can connect to their Mac with nothing else. They don't have to allow a screen recording or accessibility because Live Desktop uses the built-in screen sharing feature, or Apple Remote Desktop essentially framework. That's already authorized by Apple. You don't need to give permission to that once you install Addigy, and that's it. Basically, I just go in and I can connect remotely. So now I'm on their brand new Mac, and I'm either going to migrate from a Synology backup wirelessly, or I'm going to have them plug in their backup hard drive to the new Mac, and I just literally take it from there. I install all the software updates. I let Migration Assistant go through all of its calculations to make sure we get this nice smooth transfer. That's all great, and I don't need to be on the phone with them for any of that, which is fantastic. I've even done recently a direct peer-to-peer transfer. So I had the old Mac and the new Mac, and the old Mac in this case was a MacBook Pro where the client said, I don't know, it's not really turning on and this and that. And then she said, oh, it turned on. And briefly, and then it stopped turning on. But while it was on, she got a photo of the screen. And she's, of course, I don't know what happened, why it's not working. And it turns out there's a very clear crack in the bottom right corner of the display. So I'm like, it's definitely damage, physical damage on the screen there. So, and I'm remote. She can't back up the machine. She wants to drop it off like that day. I'm like, I don't have anybody in the office today. Let me see what I can do for you. So we tried a bunch of stuff. The old machine just wasn't booting. And I was pretty sure it's from this physical damage due to the display. We're just not getting a display. So I booted the old machine in target disk mode. I had her buy a Thunderbolt cable, plug it into the new Mac, and I'm good to go. I'm already connected with Addigy Live Desktop. I just do the transfer directly over the Thunderbolt cable. In another case, I did a peer-to-peer over Wi-Fi because the old machine didn't have a backup. It was like totally full. She couldn't get a backup going. We just opened up Migration Assistant on the old Mac. And again, like the reason Live Desktop is so great for this is because it's using the built-in Apple Remote Desktop. So you can stay connected even while Migration Assistant is running. If you use like a TeamViewer or Splashtop connection that's like a temporary one, you can't stay connected while Migration Assistant is running because there's no user session.
Yeah.
So this completely works around that. You can stay connected during the entire process. It's really phenomenal. I have to just say it's awesome. If you don't know about it yet, feel free to reach out to me on Slack or just join the Addigy channel and check it out because it's really worthwhile.
That's a great tip. And I never knew that you could still stay connected during the Migration Assistant session. The other thing I wanted to ask you, and you probably are going to tell me yes, is that when you have to acknowledge on I believe the target machine that the numbers is the same, that's not a synthetic click. So you can click on that and acknowledge it remotely?
Exactly. Yep.
That's
you can
great.
do the whole thing. It's so awesome. Yeah, even better. So now you're connected. So Addigy Live Desktop, you click Start Session. It opens screen recording on your machine. So as the consultant, you're driving. It's using screen sharing on your Mac. So I've got screen sharing open on my Mac, and I'm remoted into some machine across the country or whatever. And I can also, the other great thing about this is, as I've mentioned, I like to let Migration Assistant calculate like whatever it needs to do first before I actually start the transfer, because I found that's just more successful. So as I'm waiting for it, when I start waiting, like when I get to that step, I take a screenshot. There's a screenshot button right at the top of screen sharing. So I just click screenshot, save it to my desktop. I don't really care. Maybe I'll never look at it again, but it's there for my reference if I need it. And then when it gets to the point where it's like fully calculated, take a screenshot. Now I know how much data is supposed to be transferred. But then I start the transfer, and then I let it get going a little bit, like where it starts to show actual amounts of files transferred or data, or better yet, time estimate, take a screenshot. So now I've just got like a pile of screenshots on my desktop from this project where I can go back and I can say, okay, at this time, it was estimating this amount of time. If there's an issue at the end, I can go back and I can say, this is how much data it said it was going to transfer. So all along the way, I've got screenshots really easily just from thanks to screen sharing in Live Desktop.
Let me ask you a question. If you're doing this, let's say, and you wanted to take one of those thoughtful walks that you mentioned in our last episode last week, and you're watching the squirrels bury their nuts in the ground, right? One of those Joe Saponari thoughtful walks. And you're contemplating the universe. Let's say your computer that's handling this session back at your home base, for whatever reason, there's a little blip in power and your computer reboots or something. Can you get back into those of those sessions?
Oh, okay, yeah.
That's terrific too. Totally. Because you could just tell the client not to touch stuff, and you could handle other calls. You could go for thoughtful walks, look at the squirrels. That's great, Joe. That's right. You're like, I must say, you're like the puppet master there in Colorado, pulling the strings to these computers all around the nation.
Yeah.
And, there you are.
I had 3 going at once on Friday, 3 different migrations.
Beautiful thing. 3 migrations at the migrations.
Yeah.
Migration. Yeah. That's the plural for migration.
Right. Migration. Yeah.
Wait a minute. Three separate clients you had. You were pulling the puppet strings at
totally.
one time. Wow.
Yeah, absolutely. All remote, fully remote. And then even better. So there's another tip, which is I added to Addigy. I didn't submit this to the Addigy community. It's just like a one-liner. I probably could if it's useful to anybody. The caffeinate command. I'm sure you guys have seen that. There's a version of the caffeinate command. I forget which flag it is, but you basically can just prevent idle sleep. So you're not like locking the screen on with burn-in and stuff, but you're just telling the system. It's almost like saying prevent system from sleeping when the display goes to sleep, like temporarily. So I just wrote this like little one-liner, and I have several versions of it in my Addigy instance. I can just send this out as a script to a machine that's going through migration or for whatever purpose. But let's say it's estimating 5 hours, right? And it's the end of my day here, and I'm going to go look at the squirrels or whatever I'm going to do. So I when that's going to finish in the middle of the night or something like that, I don't want the system to go to sleep 20 minutes later or whatever the default is, right? So I just send the caffeinate command to the remote machine with it's configured, like, again, just to prevent idle sleep and for whatever set amount of time. I have a version for 6 hours and 12 hours and 18 hours and 24 hours. So I'll send the caffeinate for 24 hours kind of thing, or whatever it is, if it's 12 hours or something. And this way, the machine, I know, like when it finishes the migration, it's just going to sit there and wait for me now. So it's going to just be on that screen. So when I connect later, I can just reconnect the next morning, and it's like migration complete. It's such an awesome feature to come back to. Again, thanks to Live Desktop, I just go in and it's like migration complete. And I'm like, this is great. Now I can literally just click done. I can go through the initial setup for the user. I can get in. Oftentimes they will have provided their Dropbox password, their iCloud password, whatever. And I can go in and I can actually get through all the initial setup for them and have a fully ready to go machine with no prompts jumping up and all that stuff by the time they need to sit down and use it. So yeah, all of that can be done. So that's the other tip, is use the caffeinate command to prevent idle sleep so that it's there ready and waiting for you when you're ready to go check on it again. And in fact, you can even set it up as part of my little migration policy, which is again like a custom policy in Addigy specific for this purpose. I can configure it like to disable sleep entirely. I don't like doing that because if I forget to remove it right away and it's a laptop, then like they it won't go to sleep, even if they put it to sleep. Like they don't have the sleep command essentially in the Apple menu, and I think it won't go to sleep in clamshell mode in that case. So I don't want to be that heavy-handed about it, but as part of my migration policy, I do prevent sleep, or I think I have it not sleep for 2 hours, something like that. So it gives me like at least an initial buffer. And then, like I said, I go in with the caffeinate command to just buy myself whatever amount of time I want. It's all done through Addigy. So just can't thank them enough for such an awesome service.
Yeah, I think the part that always freaked me out, you're so comfortable with now, which is like walking away and leaving it overnight or something. I'm deathly afraid that it'll disconnect and I'll never be able to reconnect again. But all your positive experiences shows otherwise. So
Puppet Master.
Yeah, Puppet Master galore. That's pretty cool, man. I know you've had to develop a system for yourself since you're not able to be on site, and you're putting your trust in this, and it's actually coming through, which is pretty awesome.
Totally. And it's fast too. It's really speedy. I'm all the way over here connecting to most clients miles away, and it's really fast. It's been 100% reliable. Every once in a while you click start session and it opens screen sharing. It doesn't show the prompt and you're just waiting for screen sharing. I'm not sure what's going on. You cancel it. You just click it again and there you are. You're in. You put in, and I should mention, like, the credentials are the user's credentials. So it's either if you have an admin account there on your like company machines, you just use your own admin account that the client might not even know. And if you have ARD restricted to that one account, it stays nice and secure. Yeah. In my case, if it's like a temporary user account where we just create a temporary custom password, that's what we use for the migration part. And then we can use their account after the migration to reconnect. So yeah, it's just so seamless. I think it has a timeout of an hour. So if you can connect to a machine and leave it up for a while, eventually it'll just stop and you've got to just start a new session. It's just like one click. So it's really nice.
And here's a question for the junior cub cadet Addigy user. You've put on this migration policy that they've downloaded, right? And then once you get them up and running, you reinstall. You obviously don't deinstall the existing policy. You reinstall another policy for this client. Yes.
Right. Yep. You got
profile.
It.
And so what happens, Jerry? What happens there? Do they don't live together? What do you do there? How do you reconcile that?
Question. That's not a cub reporter. That's an advanced question. So I was worried about it.
Right. Explorer Scout Addigy question.
Exactly.
He's got 2 stripes on his badges.
So I'm thinking like, okay, I can't saw off my own legs. That used to be a saying. You can't. So if I remove my Addigy policy, how do I like re-enroll the machine? I don't want to have to call the client, all this stuff. It just works. It works freaking great. So you go in to System Preferences Profiles. You select your enrollment profile. So in this case, it's my like temporary migration profile, whatever. Click on that, click the minus, unenroll. So it removes all the other configuration profiles that might be there. Now, I think behind the scenes, it's also queuing up the agent removal, if I'm not mistaken, but there must be like some window of time where it's never been an issue for me, because I then just immediately go back in. I will have already downloaded, or I'll just quickly download their actual enrollment profile for their actual policy for the client.
Now, what would have happened if you had done it the other way, where you put in their actual enrollment policy and then you went into the profiles and you remove the temporary migration?
You can do it that way, actually, but you can't enroll the new one until you remove the old one. So the new one shows up at the top, install, just like a new one would normally. But if you try to click install, Apple's going to say it's like whatever, it's already enrolled or something like that. Yeah.
So the moment you de-enroll, you don't lose your connection and then you're compromised because you're saying it's still being queued up and you could just put on the brand new one and you're good to go.
It's good to go. Terrific. Yeah, I thought worst case, I guess you could enroll it in Splashtop or TeamViewer or something as like a secondary, but I haven't had to do that. It's totally seamless. I can't speak highly enough of how well this whole thing works. It's really like a killer feature from Addigy.
Yeah, I think that it's terrific. But going beyond that, once you've got the computer migrated, I find that for the user, it's routine for us to do it now. But for the user, it's really tough for them to onboard that machine themselves without your guidance. And it's so much quicker for us to just get them through all those different little startup screens and pop-ups and allowing all these security and privacy extensions and green lighting those and getting that all polished up and ready to go for them to take over. I just feel like that's a real necessity that we as techs need to do post.
Yeah, it's I don't know what you want to call it, but like a concierge kind of style or like white glove service.
That's French, isn't it? Concierge, yeah.
Yeah, to get, you want to basically hand them a machine that's fully ready to go, this is, I don't know, maybe not for every client, but a lot of my clients really just like this kind of style. And Apple does some stuff, and sometimes clients will ask me, can the Apple Store do this? And it's, yeah, they can do some of this for you, but your old Mac's not turning on. I'm not sure what they're going to do about that.
They'll erase it first.
I'm not sure they're going to deal with passwords of any sort. I'm pretty sure I assume that they just get to the migration assistant finished part, and then it's up to the client to do all that stuff themselves. And they could call us at that point. But the point here is you want to have a seamless transition from your old one to your new one. You want to pick up right where you left off with all your data there. All your apps are authenticated and activated, and all your accounts are working. And it's great. That's just a great service. And it's not crazy expensive. This makes it so efficient because it's the first part is 15 minutes, and then maybe it's a little bit of overseeing it. It's another maybe 30 minutes to like log into everything after going on. And yeah, I mean, in those cases, the clients are usually happy to pay for an hour and a half of our time. And it's not like hard work for us typically. I can oversee a couple of them remotely, and yeah, there's good profit there for us. So
it's not bad at all. An hour to an hour and a half, that's pretty good, actually, time-wise. It's pretty efficient. Maybe we can hire you guys as a subcontractor. We'll bill 2 hours.
Right.
You do 1 hour. We'll be all set.
May I interject here for a second? You ready for this?
Yeah.
Marionnettiste.
What did that say?
Marionnettiste. Marionnettiste.
That's French for puppet master. Marionnettiste.
That's me. You're going to get emails from me with that. So that's my middle name now from now on. So it's probably no surprise after singing all the praises of Addigy that they got funding. I'm sure. Do you guys read about this big announcement? Addigy got huge funding. It's like sometimes I worry about companies when they get venture capital, because I feel like the most common path is like an IPO or maybe an acquisition. A lot of times there's bad incentives there. If they're going to IPO, they have to show user growth at any cost. Show that you're boosting your numbers like crazy. Even if they're like fake users, we don't care. Just show growth.
You could be bought by SolarWinds.
Yeah. And usually that stuff comes at the expense of user experience. It's like the existing users, they're no longer incentivized to keep their existing users super happy if like they're trying to boost growth to show that. If they go the path of an acquisition, it's similarly bad incentives. There's the downside of like when you have consolidation in the industry, you have less competition, you have less choice. So these acquisitions are not necessarily like great for the users for choice wise and competition wise. There tends to be less incentive for good user experience in those cases. So there's less downward pressure on prices when there's less competition. So when you have an acquisition on the horizon, it's what's going to happen to like pricing models. So these are my kind of initial thoughts on what happens. I worry when companies get venture capital or when they get funded in that way. But I have to say, it's again, probably no surprise that I'm going to say this, but I trust Jason and the team he's built to navigate this as best as possible for us, for the existing users, which I think are probably already growing pretty organically just because of how good the service is. And I don't think that they have to take those paths to boost growth at any cost and all that. And I think I was thinking about this is the reason that I'm not worried about it is because I know Jason cares. I know his team cares. I know he cares about people. And I know that the team he's built is like good people. So I guess I'll just say, so Jason, Addigy, congratulations. We love you guys. Best of luck, and don't it up. No, I mean, in all sincerity, that was my thought process in going through Addigy getting funding, some conflicting thoughts about it. And I really think that if anybody can navigate that stuff, it's Addigy. Good luck and congratulations.
Yeah, I echo that. Congratulations as well, Joe. I think the aspect that we know about Jason as a person really speaks to how the company is run. So we've talked with Jason many times over the years. He's a good dude. He's a big friend of the show. As a matter of fact, something funny that happened as I was out on my trip, I was just having a social event with people outside of the conference. And I was talking with someone about their company and they're like, you know what? And they're like looking around sheepishly. I actually use Addigy. And I was like, sweet. I was like, I love Jason. Nice. We started talking. He's like, I was worried about telling anybody about that while I was here. But it was funny because he was like, hey, I'm at this other conference and I'm saying that. But and then we started to get into a whole conversation, Jason, because actually he's spoken with him personally and he was impressed that he got to speak with the founder and CEO when he's just a lowly customer. You know what I mean? So I think that, again, that speaks to who he is as a person. I think he truly does care. And that's awesome about their funding. And I think they'll do great things with it.
So let me get this straight. You were starting an underground movement at the Jamf conference for Addigy?
Nice.
We were off-site. Okay, Jerry, we were off-site at a social event I can talk about what I want when I'm over there.
Like some dissidents were you going to try to let off some sort of a smoke bomb in the middle of a presentation or something?
We're going to charge the stage with Addigy signs.
The whole thing about funding, the other example that came to mind next was 1Password. Not to just continue the gripe session on them, because I know you guys talked about that a little bit a few shows ago.
Oh, Sam doesn't like 1Password anymore.
Yeah, 1Password 8. I haven't tried it yet. I'm now hesitant over that. I still have complaints about 7, let alone 8. So I'm not sure how.
This is one better.
9.
Yeah, I better wait for 9, exactly. And I no sooner were you guys talking about it, I just saw a freaking pop up in 1Password. I duplicated a note. I was trying to clean up a client note that went sideways. Again, 1Password. It ends up where like I have a secure note and I edit it and I save it. And then Tim does that sometimes, and then I'll do that. And it's not like we're live editing the notes. It's like we go back and forth just normally as we're adding something to the notes about a client. And then one of us will notice like there's this like, now the whole note is copied below the note, and it's like a second copy, but maybe one thing changed, right? So you've got to review the whole reduplicated part of the note and all this stuff. So basically I went and I duplicated a client note, and then I was going to leave the old one as the old one and then start fixing the new one, like cleaning up all this extra duplication. I duplicated the note and I get this pop-up from 1Password. I'm in the middle of a client project and it overlays what I'm trying to edit in 1Password with this thing that's get 50% off for 3 years or cancel. I'm like, I'm not canceling anything. I duplicated a note. I didn't ask you for 50% off for 3 years. Cancel's the wrong thing. So I get all sidetracked because then I'm like making this note, like I got to rant about this on the show at some point. So I wrote all this down. I'm just like, this is so annoying. But I feel like, again, it's like, I mean, they got like super boosted funding too. And I think they are like going into the enterprise more. Like they're trying to get more of those types of accounts. It's less so the kind of entry level home user, like family accounts, which I understand because, there's a lot of good built-in options, like I've said. Good for them to go after that market because, again, people really need this stuff and that's fine. But anything that jumps up to interrupt my work like that is really frustrating. And the fact that I still have to click edit just to search a note is frustrating to me. That's still a thing. And the fact that they just seem to get duplicated sometimes with normal use. Like I can't see anything I'm doing wrong. Like I'm not leaving it open indefinitely. I'm just not sure how this happens. And it just happens sometimes. So I had to clean it up and all that. So I have to say, like, it's frustrating, but it's hard to complain about them because they have a really good offer for ACNs. Thank you, 1Password, for this great deal for the Apple Consultants Network. I use it every day. I do love it, but I've seen it go in a direction that seems to have corresponded with them getting funded. And I liked them when they were more the scrappy upstart. It just seemed like they were more like aligned with our needs. And now they have different needs on their side. So
yeah, it sounds like they took a page from TeamViewer there, Joe.
Yes, exactly.
Bite your tongue, Jerry.
Yes. Oh, God, I know. I'm still in the TeamViewer world, so don't get me started there.
Reading from the TeamViewer playbook.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm glad you came around a little bit because I thought you were like whitewashing. You're like, thank you for the 8 because we get that awesome discount. And I was all right. You said something real at the end there, which is I think there are some concerns. That's all. I still love it. I use it every freaking day, all the time. It's just I don't like. You're not using 8, Joe, yet, but I'm just not happy about the changes that I've seen. It's making me much less efficient, and that pisses me off.
Yeah.
Just that's it.
That's what happened to me with 7. I had my whole workflow, like keyboard shortcuts, everything was nice and fast. And then and again, like I'm probably not their common user, I guess, because they just I complained loudly in their forums and on the show and stuff when they did that, and they fixed it. And it was fixed for the next 0.5 versions or something. And then they broke it again. I'm just like, forget it. I'm not going to go through that whole complaining session again. I'll complain on the show a little, but I'm not going to get involved on their website and try to make the same case I already made to them. That this was now introducing friction in my workflow. And it's frustrating. But again, hard to complain too loudly when it is a really great service and it's secure and it works really well generally. But it's just the kind of the user interface that gets frustrating. And again, like one of the issues is the reduplicated nodes. So I had to figure out like, how do I clean this up when this happens? So I found I have a little tip for this. I found a workflow that can work when you have, let's say you have 2 files and you're trying to diff them. Now there's built-in tools to diff a text file and say, show me the lines that are different from A to B, like these 2 different versions of this document. And BBEdit has a lot of that stuff too. And in this case, it wasn't 2 different versions of the same document. It was a bunch of text within one document. So I have, let's say, a page of notes about this client, and some of it's a line with a password on it and a line with some setup information or whatever. And if you just have that page of info, that's great. I can scan it, I can Command F and look for it. If you have that and then you just copy it directly below itself, but like the top one has changed because I didn't see that it was duplicated below itself, and the bottom one is the old version, or maybe I did Command F and I got to the second instance of the thing that I then changed. So now there's changes in both parts. So how do I sort that out? BB Edit has a feature, and you can do it in the free version. You can process duplicate lines. So you essentially just take this, you take all the text from the 1Password note and you paste it into a new BB Edit document, and you just say process duplicate lines. And then you can basically see the before and after, you can see the result, and essentially it will remove anything that is duplicated anywhere in the document, which is not ideal in some cases because you have maybe a line of text where you have their email address and then a password associated with something, one of their accounts, the same email address later in the document with a different account password, and it'll remove the duplicate line where their email address is standalone on the second instance there. So it wasn't perfect, but it was much easier than manually reviewing it. So I went from 2,000 lines of text to 900 lines of text in this one case with this big client example. So yeah.
Still sounds like a lot of work there.
Yeah. Frustrating amount of work. And now it'll be cleaner, and going forward, I can work with that.
And just for the record, for the listeners at home, I don't have a problem with 1Password 7 or 8. And I don't know what these guys are talking about.
Yeah.
Speaking of random replication, have you noticed, is this still happen to you? Because it happens to me that in Apple Contacts, it'll still replicate from time to time information in the notes field in Contacts.
Yeah.
What? That's like a holdover from the
mobile.
What the hell was this? Yeah, exactly. From the mobile me days.
Mac even before that.
Yeah, it's like that. Steve Jobs probably threw something at somebody over this replication, but it still goes on. I thought it was just me, but you guys are seeing it too?
I actually saw this twice recently, not specifically in the notes field, Jerry, but I actually did a upgrade to Monterey for a client, and they had 5 machines or something running, I forget, like an older OS. Upgraded to Monterey, and then shortly thereafter, they're like, hey, we have triplicates of everything in our contacts. So I went in, and not only were each contact card was duplicated, but they also had duplicates of all of their groups. And in their case, of course, they have 25 groups or something for different, it's like clients from 2019, clients from 2020, like whatever their system is, that they have all these different groups in there. And all the groups are duplicated. So I had to go in and compare one group to another. It's the same number of people. Okay, delete the second group that has the same name. And then I used luckily the built-in feature works pretty well. Under the card menu, look for duplicates. And it actually did clean up all the duplicates. I think I ran it twice or something. So that worked, but I was surprised because I had not seen that in a very long time.
Most specifically, I was talking about within the card itself, I've seen data replicated. And
that's
what
I haven't seen that as much, but
yeah, like I'll go into my own contact card and I'll see my home address there 3 or 4 times. And I don't know how the hell it gets there. And I'll begrudgingly just go in and wipe out my address like 2 or 3 times. And so one exists. Maybe 6 months from now, it'll be there a couple more times. It'll be like, what the heck?
Yeah. Before anybody writes in, that look for duplicates option, I think has that option too. So you can say look for duplicates, and it tries to clean up duplicate cards, 2 of the same card that contain the same information. But then I think if you run it again, or maybe just on the first pass, there's an option, remove duplicate entries with the same information or something. It'll remove the second copy of your address in the same card, maybe. But yeah, luckily there are some built-in ways to clean that stuff up. But I have one in Contacts. It just happened today that was really frustrating. I had a client call with an issue, and I wanted to give her a call back real quick. And I looked up her contact card on my phone in Ring Central, and I couldn't tell which one was her cell phone and which one was her office.
Yes.
So Ring Central sometimes has that issue. I don't know why and it seems like when I've seen that before in the Ring Central app, I'll just go to my contacts and then it has direct information there.
Yep. I've done this dance too.
Yeah. So that's the dance, and that's fine. Then I go, in this case, I go to contacts and it's all the same thing. It just says phone. And I'm telling you, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's 11 phone numbers. And I think we used to have them labeled. And then that's like that's like the owner's mobile number. And then work is like the office number. And then there's like the second work number that they called from once, just in case they call again. We have it, but we don't use it. So that's listed other or something. And then there's some 212 number. I don't know. Is that somebody, I don't know who that is. There's the accountant is in there, and all that stuff was labeled with custom labels. It just says phone. So I'm like an idiot, like searching email for this person's name and the word cell or mobile or something. And I'm like,
the only reason why I'm laughing, Joe, is I've done this same gosh darn thing.
So bad. So bad. It's because I have the info, but I don't have the label for the info. So it might as well just be a pile of digits. Like it doesn't even, I could just go down the list and call. I'm like taking my best guess. I'm like, I think it's a 203 number. I think it was a simpler no. Like I'm just literally guessing, and it was just embarrassing. And then, but the problem is that's in contacts now. That's not just Ring Central. My contacts app lost that information. So I've never seen that before. Apparently there's some kind of glitch in my system or somewhere along the way that's losing that information, which is really bad.
So that's coming over synced from Ring Central to your contacts app, you're saying, right?
No, it's in Ring Central. We've granted access to contacts on the phone or something, I think. So that Ring Central, the app, can look up my contacts that are local on the phone.
So it's not writing anything back to the app.
That's the only thing I can think of, is that because of the issue like Jerry's seen also, where Ring Central doesn't have the info in it, maybe one of us went into the Ring Central app and went to edit there or something, and then it crapped out all that information somehow.
That's the only thing I can think of. I don't know. If it has the ability, some apps can just look at that data. I don't know if Ring Central can actually edit the data.
I'm pretty sure it can edit it. And I think maybe it's either I or somebody on my team might have actually gone in to edit in Ring Central. And maybe that's what would have caused this. Because otherwise, I'm just concerned that this is going to I'm just going to notice this missing on other contacts. And that's like really important info to have.
Yeah. Hey, so sticking on the phone conversation, I actually have a question for you both. Because Jerry has Smith AI, Joe, you have Judy AI. And between the two of them, you have some kind of answering for your clients. So my question is this. I've gotten 2 different requests from clients that are big clients of mine that are, why don't we have a phone number to call into where we can talk with the tech and get some answers? Why does it have to be a ticket? And so I wanted to ask, because I've toyed with this forever, smith.ai, and get a service like that, but it's going to be a non-technical person, even if they have some script of some basics. Have you tried restarting and all that other stuff? Is it worth it because the person just wants to know that they've found somebody live? Should I be going for that because that's what they want? I just don't see how the experience is going to be better for them, really. But if that's what they want, maybe they just need a live person. Have you gotten that feel from people that just want to speak to somebody?
I have to ask, Sam, it's setting the expectation. I've always been really clear with any potential new client, and existing clients know this, is that we don't offer help desk support. So I use that extreme example. You're not going to be able to just call us and we're going to be able to tell you how to do a word count in Word. And they're like, oh, no, we don't need that. Do they feel better about talking to a live person rather than getting an answering machine? Probably. And my pat answer when Smith AI gets on the phone, because I haven't even tried to go down the route of paying extra and maybe giving them some technical things that they could suggest the client. I think that's just asking for trouble. The typical response that they say is, our support engineers are on site with other clients, let us take your contact information, we'll get back to you as soon as possible. And they don't say via phone or via email or anything like that. And those will come in, those messages, and I'll try to respond to them depending on who called. Like we had something most recently happen to us, just as an example, where this attorney called and Smith AI will take the message and he's, I want to know how to delete data from an old Mac. So I'm not going to call this guy up and go, hey, how are you? Because this is a time and materials client. They don't have any ongoing relationship. If it was a person who has managed service with us, I might react differently. But I'm not going to call this guy in the middle of my day to go, hey, I'll send you an email, okay? So I've sent a very nice email saying, thanks for reaching out. We're tied up in appointments today, but here's a link, how to securely erase your Mac. And if you're asking on a Windows machine, we just don't have that information because I just don't want to go down that rabbit hole. And he's calling up again and he's not leaving any message this time. I did not call him. I said, sorry, we're tied up in appointments. Please, let's take this conversation to email. And if we do need to call you, we'll reach out to you. So it all depends on the client and it all depends on the nature of the call. But I do feel better that if I'm sending out these newsletters every month because I'm using Tidbit's content network and I'm rattling their cage saying, hey, look at me. I'm MacWorks and I'm telling you how to do groovy stuff, that may trigger them to call us and want some sort of an issue to be handled. So do I feel good about them getting a live person? Absolutely. And taking a message. To answer your question, Sam, I think it's an unusual request that a client's saying, hey, we want to talk to somebody that we can get some technical advice from first. I think that's maybe not setting the expectation, or they have an expectation that's unrealistic, even if you had a live person.
Jerry, I have a simple answer. If somebody says I want to erase data from my Mac, I just say make an appointment at the Genius Bar for literally any service. That's a freebie for the listeners out there. No, but that's a great question, because I feel like any agent, so to speak, would first of all need to be trained in some way technically, but also probably needs to have access to a lot of your systems. Even like Judy on my team, she's not technical, like she's not meant to be technical, but she's technical enough where when somebody has a question and they're a monthly plan client especially, she can look up the info and provide it. And she has a relationship with a few of our clients where they've called her and she's helped them. Can we bill for that? In all seriousness, she's saving me the trouble, which is fine. And they're getting some little value add by getting a more immediate answer. And that's much more the exception. It doesn't happen that often, because oftentimes I wouldn't want her to like provide much guidance to somebody where something could go wrong and get stuck somewhere or whatever. But to that exact point, it's hard to really have somebody technical on the phone. But if you have that filter, number one, they're happy to get somebody on the phone who's a person. And then that person can do very light triage. And I think that's the key to having anybody answer versus just voicemail.
That's the thing, is I don't know, can they really do light triage, or are they just like taking down your number? What's the difference, in my opinion? Like Judy can. I don't know if a service can. So I don't know. And maybe it does make a difference in just that they feel like they're not just firing off an email into the ether where they're not sure if we're getting it, rather than just reaching somebody. Or the other piece of it is, what if they're locked out of their computer and now they just have to call because that's the easiest thing to do. And
they call and I respond right away. So here's the thing. They have a record of every call, or they notify me of every call. So I don't have clients, even new potential clients, calling to say, oh, if you can't help me right now, don't call me back or whatever. So whatever they're saying, whatever simple thing they're saying, the client reaction is that they're going to accept that somebody will call them back. So there's not that triage taking place, at least for my company. And then what they do on a much higher level is they just filter all the wheat from the chaff. Right. Because we have all those people who are having keyboard problems and battery problems. And that's just, sometimes if I have a little bit of time, I'll call somebody back. But generally they're told that this is a hardware issue and you need to go to the Apple Store or authorized Apple repair center.
Yeah.
Which I think for you, Jerry, because I guess your SEO is so good and you place well for a lot of those kinds of requests. Like people are finding you first, even before they go to Apple directly.
It's winding down a little bit. It's not as intense as it once was.
Joe, I think he's paying for the terms SciMac and HCS, because when you type in one of ours, it's like, why call HCS when you have MacWorks?
Yeah, you've tried all the rest. No, go to the best. Yeah. Oh man, yeah.
They won't call you back. Call our toll-free number.
All of this, like the triage aspect, as far as like technical triage, maybe level 0, level 1 help desk kind of thing. I think that's the kind of the flip side of the coin. Like I was talking about the dark side of acquisitions and mergers and reduced competition, and those are well established. But the flip side is economy of scale. And I really wish somebody would do this. I want to do it, but I just don't have the bandwidth. But even on a small scale, let's say like a few local companies merge, for example, then you have the economy of scale of one person like who can be trained technically doing help desk level 1 and triage for all the incoming requests for like a larger number of incoming requests, which have some upside, not just the filtering out the ones that should really go to Apple, but actual clients or potential clients who need a little bit of assessment before we figure out the next step. Maybe the next step is on-site, or maybe the next step is a phone call with a more salesperson type call or whatever. I don't really have the scale to have a technical person. To your point, Jerry, if you need help with a word count in Word or something, I would love to have that. I would love to have that be a service that I offer only to my monthly clients, where they know that they can call and probably either get somebody, because I have 1 or 2 people fielding a help desk, or that they can get a call back like within an hour or 2 during the workday to get those kind of basic level 1 questions answered. Plus, probably those people would be trained to upsell those calls to, and we can do a deeper dive on this. Let's book an hour to actually get some more income out of it. But just the triage and light help desk, I think, would be a really good service to actually have, and the clients would really benefit from it. But it's hard to have that on a small scale with a local consultancy where I have 2 full-time people. So I wish that somebody would either, so first of all, if you merge with into a larger organization, I think that then you have more of an economy of scale to have that stuff built in. Or if somebody would offer that as an outsourcing option, either coupled with Smith AI or on the front end with some kind of like help desk behind that or incorporated with that, I think that would be great as a white label service for businesses like ours. Of course, then again, I think you need access to our services to be able to do that, our systems. For my case, Repair Shopper and 1Password and whatever else.
You guys could buy me out and I'll do this as my retirement plan.
Yeah, but you just tell all the clients to get lost, though. That's the
But to your point, Joe, yeah, we get 1 or 2 phone calls a day on average. And so there's no possible way that we could, the economies of scale, like you said, to hire somebody to do this kind of low-level tech triage. So, Sam, I guess the other thing, too, is what kind of customer is asking for this? Is it your top tier customer, one of your top 5, or where is this request coming from? You have to judge it by the weight of that, too.
No, yeah, that is the thing, is it's the weight of a top tier client who their new head of business operations has come from probably a larger corporate structure where they're used to having an on-call help desk. And you thought, we just had an email address. This is pretty antiquated where you just have people emailing you. I'm like, no, this is a whole help desk system on the back end. Like we just made it easy by having an email address. And he was, he had no idea that it wasn't just shooting an email to a shared mailbox and we'll try and figure it out.
He should be familiar with a ticketing system because it exists all over the world in internet technology.
Yeah, it's just, I guess he didn't, because he doesn't open tickets himself. So he was just like, why are we just shooting off an email? Anyway, he had no idea that there was a back end piece to that. But yeah, that's what he was used to, is some kind of, hey, my keyboard doesn't work. I want to pick up the phone. But again, in those larger structures, you could just dial extension 422 and get the help desk downstairs. That's different than what he has now. So it's probably a little bit of something that's not feasible for them unless they wanted to have an embedded tech, which is another option. We actually explored that one time with another company where they just wanted to have an embedded person from our company just in there every day, 5 days a week. Wow. It didn't work out, but it would have been cool.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I just don't know that in that case, like a phone person is going to help. It's just another way of getting to our text the same freaking way. Like it's just, I'll take a message and I'll create the ticket for you is basically all it's going to do.
You're out of pocket with Smith AI is not going to be very much.
That's the only reason why I might do it is just, hey, you want a phone number? Here, we'll give you a dedicated line and they can pick up for your company.
Yeah, that's a great point. Why not? You give them just a front end to email if that's what they really want, because obviously the upside is going to be much higher than the cost to actually have somebody like Smith AI doing that. And then you could even scale to more customers as an add-on, dedicated help desk phone number, as long as they understand it's just really for incoming. It's not like for like an actual live and necessarily spur of the moment. But turning this a little bit to what clients expect and the value that we provide, I was thinking about this a lot recently where I do a lot of support through email. And I guess over the years, I've just been getting better at it. But at different points, I've been like really annoyed with email. I hate email. Like it's just, I don't say hate about a lot of things, but email can be really annoying sometimes, but it's manageable for me lately. And part of that is because I have Judy actually handling a lot of my inbox and turning those into tickets or having Tim handle something or getting back to the client directly or whatever it is. She can handle a lot of that stuff, but some of the stuff sits there that's like a simple question from a client. And I had a client who was on our managed service plan for just a residence. And he asked about, I have this JBL speaker I'm trying to pair with my Mac and this and that's happening and blah, blah, blah. And I know from SciMac Alert, as we call it, Watchman Monitoring, and other sources that we recently upgraded his Mac. I know what he's dealing with. I know the software he's running. I know how to write him, like where to click. I know which features he has. I know that since he's up to date, he can click on the sound icon and actually get the choice of the output device right there in the sound icon. Because I have these tools on his system and I know his systems, I can provide email support. And I wrote him back and I said, okay, you're going to have to pair it. It sounds like it's turning on connecting to the Mac and the speaker is paired with the Mac, but you'll also have to select it from the sound output. You just click on the speaker icon. It looks like this. And you select the JBL speaker. And then you make sure to adjust the volume on your computer and you should be good to go. Maybe you have to adjust the sound on the speaker itself too. So it's like, it took me 2 minutes to write that email because I just know his stuff. And he wrote back, hey, that was it. I had to select it and then turn up the volume. And that saved me a call and scheduling and all the stuff. And yeah, I could have charged him for what probably would have been a less than 5-minute call, but I probably wouldn't have wanted. And so there isn't a lot of value there that I could have had. And I've got a happy monthly paying customer for that. So sometimes I wonder, it's like, if, that's the value add right there. Like we can do a lot of email support because you're on our plan. Is that something I should list? Like we're talking about listing like a phone support or help desk or something. Was email support something like we should explicitly list as like an option, like part of our service offering? How do you guys think about that stuff?
I don't know. Is it that appealing to list it? It's just, okay, great, I can email you, or because they don't know the value that it brings because you've become so efficient at responding in a way that can help them. Now, have you tried this? I don't know that just the guy that I was speaking with understood that email equaled a ticketing system. I don't know if it's like a bullet point that people go, wow, we get this.
Yeah, just saying email support as a bullet point, it's almost obviously like I expect you to reply to my email.
What do you want, send smoke signals? What do you, I don't understand.
So I don't know how to describe that as actually a value like that, because I've been looking at it more like that. Wow, I send a lot of emails to people providing a lot of free guidance about what to buy, how to fix something. Here's some free advice. I want my monthly plan people to know that's a benefit of their plan. But it's also hard to say you don't get that if you're not on the plan. I'm not going to just reply back, I don't know, and just send if they're not on the plan. I'm not going to just stonewall them, but it's hard to position that, but I think there is some honest value there.
This is interesting, Joe, because about a month and a half ago, we did a Patreon show where we invited Tim Pearson, and he was talking about on all his support plans, he actually lists free phone and email support. So that at first glance, that sounds, wow, you're giving away the keys to the kingdom. But think about it for a moment. You did email support for that guy for free, saved you a phone call. Even if you had to do the phone call, it would have been less than 5 minutes. And we're not going to charge guys like you and me and Sam. We're probably not going to charge them for that. However, if it is a bigger problem, we're not going to solve that. We're going to solve it with a remote session or an on-site session. It sounds like a big give, free phone and email support, but at the end of the day, and by the way, if you can solve it over the phone, but it's taking longer, you just tell that client, normally we have a little bit of a ceiling on how much free phone support we're going to supply. Because we're going long in this, we're going to probably have to bill you a fraction of an hour or something like that for this special case. But I don't think anybody who signs up for any of your support plans, if you did put free phone and email support, they're going to hold your feet to the fire if they've got some real serious problem.
Yeah, that's true. It doesn't guarantee that I'm going to solve every issue by phone or email. It's just like where appropriate. Yeah, that's a good point.
And it's a great little marketing bullet point.
I might not even say phone, because then I have to make a distinction between phone and remote, or the length of the call or the value provided. I think just free email support might even be, oh, wow, that is something. I can just email you a question. Yeah. So I have enough information about your stuff to be able to answer most of those questions. And then if it's not, I'd never hesitate to say, we need to schedule something for this.
And like I said, I don't think anybody's going to hold your feet to the fire on this.
Yeah, that's a great point. I got to go back and reread Tim's materials that he included with that episode. And I'll probably re-listen to our Patreon episode with Tim Pearson, because that was so much value. It generated a lot of conversation, not only amongst us, but also on the Slack channel and amongst our colleagues and stuff. Yeah, that was a great episode. And listeners out there, if you need inspiration for like how to reconfigure your service offerings or just sell your services or position things to clients, that was all about that episode with Tim Pearson. And yeah, I'd encourage anybody. Obviously, we'd love to have you sign up as a patron, commandcontrolpower.com, click on support. And if you are a patron, that's a great episode if you missed it. Yeah, I'm going to take my own advice and go back and listen to that one, because it was really highly valuable.
Jerry does his voices of customers of all kinds.
Am I on the cloud?
Joe spins his deeply detailed yarns all the time.
I have a whole story about this.
Sam is on the road again, phoning in from a hotel.
At least we know where I am.
Half a century combined of Apple expertise right now. Right now. My Mac is slow. Have you tried restarting? Well, the fans won't blow. Have you tried restarting? But my data is gone. Have you tried restarting? I dropped it